116 degrees Fahrenheit. That is how hot the new iPad can get, according to Consumer Reports. The Review magazine found the new iPad rises to its highest temperature while plugged in and running games. That's 12 to 13 degrees hotter than the iPad 2. Customers have been complaining as well. On Apple's website, one user wrote, "My iPad 3 gets fry an egg hot in the middle and lower left side after playing Scramble for just 10 minutes. Another saying it's much warmer than the iPad 2. It's not overheating, but it is uncomfortable. Apple, help." Apple has responded that the iPad operates well within our thermal specifications, but if customers have any concerns, they should contact AppleCare. Consumer Reports has not decided yet whether to recommend the new iPad. It did decline to recommend the iPhone 4 at the height of AntennaGate, saying the phone dropped calls when held a certain way. Apple issued a special case and the software update to address that problem. Could the new iPad be next? Well, the electronics editor for Consumer Reports will join us here, but first let's bring in our editor-at-large, Corey Johnson. And Corey, you did a little heat comparison of your own today. How'd that go?
Yes, this is the capable hands of the great Harrison Westwater, one of our producers here. And we can't go ahead and really call this a full-fledged test, but we ran the iPad and the iPad 2 side by side, playing a Netflix download with a Big Lebowski running on both machines. And what we found was, let's call it Dude and Duderino. Duderino, the new machine, cooked up about 4 degrees hotter, but both, 74, 78 degrees. Not a real hot test there.
The nickname's very important here, Corey. Now, you
yes.
did go down to LA over the weekend. You tore down a new iPad with the folks at iSupply. You did say that it was hotter. I mean, anecdotally, how does it feel?
Well, when I didn't notice any difference running the machine, but didn't really use it that long. What we did see when we looked inside the iPad, though, was pretty interesting, because what we saw inside of the iPad was a series. If you look right there at that picture, you see 3 batteries with channels between them, between those lithium ion. And the iSupply guys, right when they saw that, they said, wow, they're making some special accommodations for heat here. Now, you see us plying off the heat shields there on top of the some of the discs, I'm sorry, some of the silicon there. That's common for this machine, but what we did notice is that the DRAM and the application processor are on opposite sides of the motherboard, also seeming to be a concern about heat and separating these two things that can create heat. So clearly they knew that this machine was going to create more heat than the last iPad did, and tried to find ways to ameliorate that problem.
So you think that Apple expected this or anticipated these problems?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the design, I mean, this is one of the things you do, right? I mean, when you try to make a machine without a fan that's going to run processors and things that create heat, you try to do things to spread that heat out around, give channels for it to escape from lots of different places, so no one spot's going to heat up too much. But what we're seeing from consumers is that they're noticing that this one runs a little bit hotter. One of those comments you just had was telling, because if you're on the lower left-hand side of the iPad with a button in the middle and facing down, that's right about where the application's processor would be, and that might be where that heat's coming from.
Okay, thanks for that, Corey. Now, joining us for some more perspective on this is Paul Reynolds, electronics editor for Consumer Reports from the organization's headquarters in Yonkers, New York. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody is talking about this story today, and the first question is it too hot? Is this dangerous?
The answer to that is no, it really isn't dangerous. And I think as your reporting of what we found at the top indicates, this is uncomfortable. It is warm. It is significantly warmer than the temperatures that we recorded for the iPad 2. But we don't think that this is a cause for any serious concern.
So it's not at all dangerous, even if used in certain environments or left for a long time running in a certain place?
Well, what we did was test at an ambient temperature of about 72 degrees. There is the possibility, I suppose, if you were using it in much hotter conditions, that you might get into a problem that the temperatures could go higher. But certainly, based on our tests, we don't see reason for for a serious concern. It's also worth noting, I mean, there was a lot of attention paid a number of years back to the heat of laptops. There we had real concerns when laptops were hitting like 120 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's a temperature that sustained contact on bare skin could damage the skin. It's worth noting that the way you use a tablet is somewhat different. You know, you're holding the tablet. You may well have it in one of the covers that folds and provides a sort of stand for the iPad. Indeed, that's the way we tested it, but we were holding it and recording the temperatures as well. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to move your hands around. You're not in that constant contact with the legs the way that you are with a laptop.
But are you saying you shouldn't hold it constantly in one position for too long? I mean, there's no sort of instructions as to how to hold an iPad. Everybody holds it a different way.
No, I mean, I think that the way that, you know, the way you hold a tablet in most mobile devices is you tend to hold them and you may well move it around, move your hands around anyway, naturally. And so the chances of your skin being in prolonged contact, I mean, for a long time in one place is probably not that high.
Now, how will you guys decide whether or not to recommend the iPad 3? I know you're doing some further testing, or the new iPad, I should say. You guys are doing some further testing. What goes into that? When do you make this decision? Well,
yeah, the further testing is not necessarily testing on the temperature. We're just completing our usual battery of tests here, and we will complete those, we think, this week, and either late this week or early next we will put the iPad into the ratings. The indications we've had so far, based on our battery of tests on this device, is it's a very good device.
So exactly, the bottom line, what do consumers need to know if they're thinking about purchasing this?
I think what they need to know is that it's going to run a little warmer than an iPad 2. If you're familiar with an iPad 2, it's going to run warmer. And indeed, in some situations, it could get up to a temperature that could be uncomfortable. It's worth noting that many of the other informal tests, like your colleagues, recorded lower temperatures. That was a less demanding application, running a video, than running a very serious action game, which is what we did, to really stress the processor. And we thought get a maximum kind of temperature out of it. The chances are for a lot of activities it's going to be significantly lower than that temperature. And indeed, it was a few degrees lower when we pulled the charger out of the wall. It was at the highest temperature of 116 with the charger in. We lost a few degrees even in the gaming scenario when we were running it on the battery, and that was after about 45 minutes of gaming play.
Okay, well, indeed, the microprocessor in the third iPad is 36% larger. It's lighting many more pixels, so that's what's leading to this heat issue. But we will be anxiously awaiting the results of your tests to see if you guys recommend this thing. Thank you so much, Paul Reynolds, electronics editor for Consumer Reports.